Just so you guys know, yeah, it looks like it's working. Just so you guys know, I'm recording this because Matt Grosso, he is doing an independent study for this class. He's got to take religion 7th period, which is, you know, good too. But he's got to take religion. So I'm recording this for him, and I have to tell you that ahead of time because in the state of Montana, it's illegal for me to record you guys. Hey, Matthew. So, you have a problem with it? Yeah, whatever. Yes, go get your So, just a little reminder on the photography portfolio. The point of this thing is to show some improvement. I'm only going to collect those jump drives about once a month, maybe once a grading period, that kind of thing, just to see that you guys are improving. Okay? So, no reason to get real worried about that. One thing that I would like you to do, though, thank you. One thing I would like you to do is name your jump drive after yourself. Okay? So, when Nico hands in a jump drive, and I plug it into the computer, I want it to say Nico. Okay? Does that make sense? That way I can get them back to you. It would also be a good idea to maybe label it with a piece of tape or something and just say, this is Nico's jump drive. Alright, so let's talk photography, ladies and gentlemen. Here are some lovely photos, and these are the kinds of photos I'm going to expect you to be able to take pretty soon here, alright? So one of those photos you see on the right-hand side, anyone know who took that beauty with the trees silhouetted? Glorious sunset. Alright, Ryan Gallup, that's right. So Ryan Gallup took that picture. He helped me out with this presentation, helping me get photos and telling me what settings he was using with his DSLR camera, because you guys are going to progressively start to move away from the point-and-shoot cameras and move into the DSLRs. So let me tell you what the difference is. So, some equipment that you're going to be using in this class, and I'm hoping to get another one, is a DSLR. That stands for Digital Single Lens Reflex Camera, okay? So, Digital Single Lens Reflex Camera. So, this is what we want to be using because you can take some incredible photos with this kind of thing. What's the other kind of camera that we have? Alright, the regular. That's called point-and-shoot camera. So, point-and-shoot cameras are great too. I've got a point-and-shoot camera at home that is good, but it doesn't take the kind of pictures that I want. And now that I've taken lots of pictures with my T3i, what do you think I really enjoy? Yeah. Oh, man. Spoiled. Yeah, I've been spoiled all summer taking pictures with that thing. So I don't even touch my Olympus anymore. It's like, it just doesn't do it the way that I wanted it to. Alright, so this is actually a pretty nice one though. You notice this Nikon? Notice these settings up here. This is what differentiates really, you know, not as awesome point-and-shoot cameras from really good ones. Because these settings you can adjust to be very similar to a DSLR. Whereas most point-and-shoot cameras, you hit power, you click the button, and it takes a picture, right? So those are great to fit in your pocket, but it's not quite as quality of pictures. So I'll show you some of the things that we're going to be working on learning throughout the course of this class, trying to get good at. We're going to have assignments on taking these kinds of pictures and adding them to your portfolio. So we've got the rule of thirds. What's that mean?
So many thirds of sky.
Okay, so you don't want to have too much sky or too much headroom or too much of the person, even too much of the subject. And we'll look at examples of that. Another thing is we have aperture. What's aperture? Can you find it for me real quick?
Aperture.
The 30-second summary of it.
Is the background of the camera,
Yeah.
how open it is, and it affects the blurriness of the background.
There you go. So aperture helps us set up things called depth of field, which we'll get into as well. The depth of the field helps make it so that our subject... Watch the cord! Oh, good. The depth of field sets it up so that our subject jumps. Our subject is the thing that we want to be seeing there, and so that makes it be a little more artistic. Then we have exposure. So exposure is how bright it is, and making sure it's not overexposed or underexposed or it's too dark. We have ISO. ISO, I can't find an actual definition of an acronym for it. I think it's just called ISO. Okay? What's ISO control? Alright, Nate, you know this. I'm like the speed of your shutter. Good. So the ISO helps determine the amount of light that's allowed through the shutter as it snaps. Okay? And so that way it helps determine the exposure. Alright? And exposure is how light the picture is. Then we have shutter speed. So why is shutter speed important? On the moving object, what do you think? Do I need slow or fast? Fast. Alright, we need a faster shutter speed. Why?
So you don't blur.
Alright, so you avoid the blur. Exactly. Alright, so we're going to look at some examples here. Let's take a look at rule of thirds. What do you think? Good picture?
Bad picture.
Horrible picture! For this one I googled really bad photography and I found this. Yeah, that's not good. Oh man, yeah, it's Photoshop. Yeah. Alright, so it was used for an example. Why is this bad? I mean, they give it to you right there with the X, but why is it bad?
So much room above her head.
Okay, too much headroom is what we call that. And then you can't see her arms, which you know, if they take it just a little lower, see a little more shoulder and a little less sky, it might work. But the fact is, it just doesn't work because there's way too much headroom. That's maybe a little better. She doesn't have her arms. Okay. But at least she's in the third. She doesn't what, Nico? Oh, yeah, okay. All right, it's better. All right, so here is a violation of the rule of thirds. What do we have happening here? Too much headroom. Where should, if we're imagining these lines here, where should his head be?
In the third quadrant.
All right, we want his forehead a little higher in this third quadrant, maybe his eyes right at this level. All right, so here's an example of a rule of thirds that's working out pretty well. You got the forehead in the upper third quadrant, leaning over to the right, and then the rest, hey, you can still see some background. It looks nice. Why not put him right in the middle?
Because you want to see background.
Yeah, you want to see some background. And plus, in film, this is something to think about when we get to your horror films. Alfred Hitchcock, one of his really great tactics was to put the camera straight on a person. Why? Why is that disorienting to have a camera right on the person? That's not natural.
Get all
Yeah.
the emotion.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, you get tired of looking. All right, so it's a little awkward. It's off-putting to the audience. That's something to think about if you want to make a picture or a film awkward. Put the person center frame and right in your face. All right, so now let's take a look at some good rule of thirds here. Here we've got a lovely boat scene. We've got good rule of thirds. Lovely, isn't it? And then what are we doing here?
Going to the island.
All right, if we didn't have this there, would that be as good of a photo? No, but this helps balance out the photo, having those islands in the back there. What about this one? What are they doing effectively?
Just beautiful.
Indeed. What? Why is
The
it?
sun is setting.
Okay, so if it's just the rock but no sun, is that as much fun? Well, it's without the sun. Without the sun, it's not as much fun. If you just have the rock, it's too much over here. But because you got the sun to balance it out, you're framing the picture, framing it up. Okay? Next one, what about this?
Sunrise is beautiful.
Beautiful. Indeed. All right. Perfectly. Rule of thirds. Yes. Okay. Look at that beautiful duck-like thing. I don't know what that is. All right. And then how about this?
Oh, that's cool.
Yes. All right. How do the clouds help you frame this thing?
Where did you get my pictures?
I know. Seriously, Zach, you got to get these out there, man. Seriously. All right. So this is another proper rule of thirds. Now let's take a look at the light issue. Aperture. Okay. So aperture is a small hole inside the camera. You can see the lens from the outside. That's the inside. That little closing there, that is the aperture. That's the thing that allows light to pass through that lens as it's taking the picture. So the size of this thing is measured in f-stops, as they're called. The reason that's important is because on your camera you can set the aperture using f-stops. Okay? So the size of this thing measured in things like this: f8, f16, f5.6. That's the measurement of that aperture hole. And what that tells you is the lower the number, the larger the aperture. So the way to think of it is kind of opposites, right? Right there. So I know.
It's fractions.
I don't know. So yeah, maybe that's it. There we go. So the larger the number, or excuse me, the lower the number, the larger the aperture, which means the brighter the image and the more blurry the background. That make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And then it's the opposite if you go the other way. So the higher the number, the smaller the aperture. Therefore, the darker the image, the sharper the background. All right? So let's take a look at some ideas here. This helps us control brightness and depth of field in your photography, and also, as we'll find out, in your HD filming. So here's a picture that Ryan took as well. Stole it from his blog. All right, so here you go. We've got a depth of field where the subject is in sharp focus, but the background is blurry. So what kind of aperture setting would you say we have here?
High. Low.
Lower one, because we've got this grain of wheat that's actually in focus and the rest is intended not to be. Therefore, it's allowing in some light, making it nice and colorful. So we've got what's called a shallow depth of field. So if you have a shallow depth of field, you've got a lower number. For instance, f4.5. Therefore, subject is blurry or in focus.
Focus.
In focus. And background is blurry or in focus.
Semi.
Blurry or semi-blurry, depending on how you focus your camera. Exactly. Now with a full depth of field, that's where everything is in focus. So if you're doing a landscape photo, do you want shallow or full depth of field? Full. If you're doing action photography where you're getting a panorama of the entire field, we want full or shallow depth of field. Full. I'm zooming in on a softball player who's about to pitch, and I don't want to see all the distraction in the background. What do I want, full or shallow? Shallow. Okay, so that's where you're changing the f-stops and some other things that we'll look at too. Here's a little video for you. I hope you can hear it. Let's see.
Hi. In this tutorial, we're going to talk about one of the most creative tools in the photographer's arsenal, depth of field. In photography, depth of field is defined as what's in focus in front of and behind the subject that we have focused on. In this picture, for instance, we have a very shallow or minimal depth of field with only our subject in focus. Shallow depth of field reduces distracting backgrounds or directs a viewer's attention to a specific part of the photograph. However, in this next image, everything is in focus from the foreground to the background. So this picture has great or deep depth of field. Having everything in focus works well on sweeping landscape vistas or where you want to show that everything is of equal importance in a picture. Depth of field is affected by the aperture, that variable-sized opening in the back of the lens that we learned about in an earlier tutorial. The smaller the aperture, let's say f2 or 2.8, the larger the diameter of the opening and the shallower the depth of field. And the larger the f number, for example f11 or f22, the smaller the opening and the greater the depth of field. So, from the shallow depth of field in this picture, I'd say it was probably taken using a large aperture, such as f2.8. While this picture was almost certainly taken with a small aperture, such as f22. For many photographers, this numbering system can be confusing in the beginning. So here's a simple rule of thumb to help you remember. Imagine you have 22 eggs lined up in a row running away from your camera. Focus your camera on one of the middle eggs. If you want just that egg to be in focus and all the others out of focus, use a wide aperture such as f4 for a shallow depth of field. But if you want most of the eggs to be in focus, you would have to use a small aperture such as f22 to achieve a much greater depth of field. So just remember, the more things you want in focus, the higher the f number you choose. The fewer things you want in focus, the smaller f number you choose. One easy way to test the effect of different apertures for yourself is by setting the mode dial on your EOS to AV, which stands for aperture value. In this mode, you can change the aperture and your EOS will calculate the shutter speed needed. Depth of field is a little difficult to judge at first. The best way to learn is to shoot a number of images and then view the results on your EOS live view screen, or upload them to a computer, or even print them out to clearly see what is in and out of focus. If you would like to share some of your photography and help others learn, upload some of your shots to the Project tab on this page. There are two tabs, one for shallow depth of field and the other for deep depth of field. We would love to see your results. Happy shooting.
Alright, so you guys are going to start shooting these kinds of pictures as well. So this week, the assignment is going to be to shoot shallow depth of field and a deeper depth of field. So I want you to try and be able to find a way to do that with whatever you've got. If you can't do that with your current camera, you can use one of ours. And by next week, let's have those pictures on your jump drive. Okay? So, next tactic that we're going to look at. We're just going to do a breeze through all of these things, and that way we can start to build up that portfolio as time goes on. So aperture, just once again, here's some more photos just to kind of compare and contrast. Here we've got one that we've got of some rocks. What do you think? Is it shallow or deep depth of field? Deep, because everything is being covered here and there's a lot of distraction. Is there any one spot where you have a real focal point? No. Now compare that to this one. Okay, what makes it better? Okay, it's focused. We've got a definite focal point. Yes? The what? You stare at the blurry. Okay, so yeah, I mean sometimes your eyes might focus on the blurry, but think of it this way too. I'm going to have you get uncomfortable for a minute, right? So I'm trying to look at all of you, right? Looking at all of you, so I've got all of you in focus. Now if I get real close, again, sorry, you're in the front row. I know, she's always in the front row, so therefore. So, I'm real close. What am I focused on? Now look at the person next to you. Get pretty close. Yeah? What are you focused on? And everything behind him, is that in focus? No, so your lens is meant to, okay. So your lens is meant to do the same thing that the eyes do naturally. Okay? Does that make sense? So yeah, you might look at the blurry stuff, but you're meant to look. I mean, your eyes are supposed to be drawn to the focal point. So, here for the example, we've got a high f-stop on the camera, therefore smaller aperture and therefore deeper depth of field. Is that all looking right to you, Ryan? Okay, good. So these are the settings you were using? Okay, I was kind of winging it. All right, so there you go. Now let's take a look at some other examples. The one on the left, deep or shallow?
Shallow.
Shallow. All right, the one on the right?
Deep.
Deep. Which one is more artistic and prettier?
Shallow.
Okay, the shallow one. So for the video yearbook, when we're taking pictures for these, what kind of picture should we take?
Shallow.
Shallow depth of field. Let's get artistic with it because when the yearbook staff goes out and takes pictures, they usually don't think about these kinds of artistic angles and artistic types of tactics. So we want to start emphasizing that because we're giving our pictures to the video yearbook. All right, so on the left, we've got an f-stop of, what is that, f1.4. And so only the only focal point is that funny little thing sitting there. Rabbit. Sitting on the counter, yes. And then on the right, we've got f16. Therefore, everything is in focus. Which one's cooler?
F1.4.
All right, f1.4 because everything else is in focus and we're distracted by the garbage can and the coffee thing and the whatever else.
And the reflection on the
reflection. We're distracted, aren't we? Okay, there you go. Here's some more examples. Given the size of the aperture, here's the aperture as it would look with this kind of setting, and here's how it would look on the camera with this. Yeah, there you go. So f2.8 and f5, they're both pretty good. As you go along, it's getting too distracting. Does that make sense? All right, let's see what else we got. Now we're getting into exposure. Yes?
When you take a picture, like let's say f-stop 2.8, it's going to be a super fast. It's going to take it really fast, so you don't need a lot of light. It's going to have a really fast shutter speed. But to take like an f-stop 22, you have to have like a tripod. It's going to be like a really long shutter speed to let all the light in and make sure that the image looks good.
Good. So we'll get into the mode settings on the camera in a minute. If you're in aperture priority mode, the camera will automatically adjust shutter speed and ISO as long as you don't mess with the settings. Okay? So what he's talking about is, I mean, with a long shutter speed, you're going to have to keep it stable so that you can actually get the photo. Give you a hand up, Nico? No, you're just, all right. So, now let's look at exposure. Here we've got a picture, again from Ryan on this one, where we've got an underexposed picture. What's the problem?
It's all dark.
Can't see it, exactly. Here's one that is overexposed. What's the problem? All right, it's too bright. It's hurting my eyes. Now here's one that's, hey.
That's pretty good.
Scary. All right. That ominous sky. It's beautiful. Yes, okay. So, that's a little tip on exposure, and later I'll show you how to adjust exposure on this camera. All right, here's a little video again. The lovely Australian.
Hello again. In this tutorial, we're going to look at light, or more specifically, lack of it. As we know, photography is all about light. The name basically defines it as drawing with light. So a lack of light has always been a problem for the photographer. Up until now, when there wasn't enough light available, a photographer could either decrease their shutter speed or open up their aperture, or do both. Even then, they might still have had to use extremely long exposures with the camera on a tripod. Sometimes the only option was to use external lights to illuminate the subject to successfully capture an image. But in many cases, photography isn't just about being able to see a subject in great detail. It can also be about trying to capture a mood, a sense of light and shadow, or perhaps something so delicate and mysterious that adding an external light source would destroy it. It's for these special moments when the mood is right but the light levels are impossibly low that EOS cameras have an ISO range upwards of 1600 or 3200 and on some models extending up as high as an extraordinary 25,600. To have a little bit of fun with low light conditions, Canon recently sent professional photographer David Knight into a poorly lit, haunted house to play with the ISO range on an EOS camera. Here are 5 examples of shots he took, increasing the ISO level a bit more in each one. Starting with ISO 100, we get what we've come to expect from the Canon EOS. Zero noise, great sharpness, and a subtlety of tone that really holds the mood. And the detail is amazing. You feel as if you're in the room with the tricycle. But a tripod is necessary with a slow shutter speed of around a quarter of a second. Here, the ISO has been increased to 400 to enable us to capture the beautiful texture in the wall. However, the camera still can't be handheld, given that the shutter speed is now 1/15th of a second. Using an ISO of 1600, the camera was just hand-holdable, but a tripod would still be recommended due to the shutter speed of 1/30th of a second. The slightly pastel tones of the image from this higher ISO work well, and still there is no loss of sharpness or fine detail, even at the ISO 1600. Here, in an almost entirely dark room, incredibly, we can still achieve an image using ISO 3200. We are also at the stage where the camera can now be used without the assistance of a tripod, given the faster shutter speed of a 60th of a second. You will still achieve clear detail, but you may start to see the first signs of minimal noise at this ISO. At an ISO of 12,800 and a shutter speed of 1/25th of a second, you can comfortably handhold the camera and record an image like this one of shattered glass. Amazingly, we can still see that we only have minimal noise levels, even at this ISO setting. Photos like this are impossible without a high ISO. Had the photographer tried to use ISO 100, he may not have achieved an image at all. So as you've just seen, having such an extreme ISO range can open up all sorts of creative possibilities. Aside from venturing into haunted houses, this extended ISO capability offers photographers the ability to take more handheld photography and is also brilliant for freezing action with fast shutter speeds in low light environments. So
Alright, and that's where it's important for us. So, if we're taking a look at filming, not even. Hello? Oh, yes, Zach Wall. Okay, thank you.
10 minutes later.
There you go, Zach. All right, so the reason that ISO stuff is important is last year when we were taking pictures at, say, for instance, the football games, or when we were filming using the DSLR at football games, everything was out of focus. It was hard to see anything. So if you were filming with the DSLR and set it to a higher SLR or ISO, or make the adjustments in the camera, then you can actually get this stuff in focus a little bit easier. Same with photos. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Oh, and then I went too far. All right, so here's an example of when we have a low ISO. So you're taking this picture. It's an action shot. What's happening, Ryan? What's happening?
He's jumping, and the ISO was like 200, or actually I think it was like 80 during the day, which is really fast.
So is it letting in enough light at the fast enough time? No. So if you're setting a higher ISO, what's going to happen with the shutter speed?
Slow down.
Okay, longer shutter speed, but it's going to bring in the light fast enough, right? So, difference? What do you think? Better picture? Yeah? Actually captures the moment the way we want it to? Yeah, all right, pretty sweet too.
At least set your
I like that. I like that. All right, and who is that? Does that guy go to the school? Oh, does he? Okay. I was going to say. All right. So here we've got another one. Here we've got a fast shutter speed. So with a fast shutter speed, what's it going to do? Capture the moment. How? Super fast and crisp and clear. Okay, so we got super fast, crisp, and clear. Here's one with a slow shutter speed. All right, and you're using a tripod, I'm assuming here, right? So, what's it doing? What's it doing for the photo? Alright, giving a little bit of blur effect to the water. Looking pretty awesome, too. So, finding a more artistic way to do things with that. Alright, so another video. Another Australian. Yeah! Yeah.
on the top of an EOS DSLR camera, you'll find a dial known as the mode dial. This is actually split into three sections: full auto, basic zone, and the creative zone. I'll talk about the creative zone later in a Get Creative tutorial, but for now, let's take a look at full auto and then explore the basic zone. Now, if you have an upper level EOS, you'll notice that there is actually no basic zone. So firstly, full auto mode. Quite simply, this mode is exactly what it implies. It does all the thinking for you. It allows you to take the camera out of the box and just start shooting higher quality shots than any compact camera could. Now, it's a great option if you're just trying to get used to your EOS, or if you see a shot and you just don't have the time to set up. So now, let's take the camera out of full auto and explore the basic zone. So turn the dial to portrait mode. Here you can throw the background way out of focus and let your subject dominate the picture. Now, it's a good tip to avoid you or your subject facing directly into the light. You'll find that soft lighting conditions like overcast days or early mornings, that's going to be the best light. Hard light of any kind from any direction will result in ugly, distracting shadows. Now switch to landscape mode. This mode increases the depth of field, so more of the scene will appear in sharper focus. Now, just as a note, your built-in flash will be disabled in this mode. Turn the dial once again to close-up mode. Now, this mode is actually a lot of fun and a great challenge. Try to find something good and stable to rest on, as camera shake can really change what's in focus. Faces, flowers, insects, you name it, you can get close to it. And it does have really interesting results. Now onto sports mode. And you don't have to be shooting sport to use this mode. It's good for any form of movement, helping freeze the motion in the subject with a really fast shutter speed. Again, like landscape mode, your built-in flash will be disabled. And finally, night scene mode. This mode is designed for a nearby subject at night, like a person. You can also use it indoors for backlit shots, when the light is behind your subject. And it's really good then for kind of obtaining a natural exposure in the background. Now, as with most things in photography, the best way to learn is by doing. So switch your EOS to any one of these modes and start shooting. The more shots you take, the more you'll learn.
Okay, so tomorrow I want you all to have your cameras with you. If you have video cameras, bring those too. Tomorrow we're going to go down to the gym and we're going to run around essentially. You guys are going to practice taking photos of people running around. Yes, it's going to be hot. I'm going to change into my shorts ahead of time.
And our tanks, right?
And your tanks.
Yes.
I don't care. Why not? Stick it to the man. That's right. Okay, so, you know, if ladies can wear them, why can't you, right?
Exactly. That's
Amen. All right, so maybe I should stop recording this because now it's going on.